Spider-Man 2 is officially coming to PC only 15 months after its release instead of the normal 2 years. However, there is no story DLC. And the internet, as per usual, is flipping out.
I'm in a glass case of emotion!
Because if you guys don't remember, the very first Spider-Man game on PlayStation in terms of the 2018 start of that little series had 3 story DLCs, and then one of the bigger ones was actually kind of spun off into its own game, aka Miles Morales. And then we obviously had Spider-Man 2. And if you paid attention to any of the leaks that came out after Spider-Man 2 was initially released with all of the Insomniac stuff, whether it was the planned DLC stuff, a side Venom game, or even the Wolverine leaks and everything, which we are not going to be showing here at all. I personally barely looked at any of that. It is a little weird that there is no story DLC coming out for Spider-Man 2, especially again when the previous game had some story DLC. But there could be a few reasons to that I personally kind of chalk this up to. First off, maybe the leaks, just simply cause a lot more headaches than we're seeing on the surface, obviously. And it would just take way more time out of the budget. It would cost more money and everything because things had to be delayed due to the hack and everything. And they're just like, you know what? It's not worth it. We're going to take that story stuff and we'll just bring it over to the third game, right? Especially because with a game like Spider-Man, you got to make sure you sell a lot of copies and make a lot of money because those costs go up extra high for these type of games. Especially when we know that the budget for Spider-Man 3, or the cost of it, I should say Spider-Man 2, is like over $300 million or something like that, which I believe they have made back. I mean, last I checked, Spider-Man 2 sold over 11 million copies, maybe 15 million copies. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it's sold, right? It is sold well. And so I'm assuming Spider-Man 2 will probably do the same, even though people I know will complain about having to sign on via the PSN and everything like that. And yeah, people say one thing and always do another. That's just the way of the internet, essentially. But I do want to bring up again, just the fact that not seeing story DLC from this, while yeah, it's sad we won't be able to return to this game and play more stuff from the story, especially when we saw things like the ending mission with Carnage and everything, which would definitely make it into game 3 if I had to take a wild guess. We also had some other side missions for other stories like the Chameleon, and so that stuff isn't really here. However, again, most likely the way I look at it is that when we had all of those leaks happen and everything, most likely that put a screw into the cog that is Insomniac, and they're like, it's just not worth to do it right now due to having to most likely literally stop everything and try to fix everything and make sure everything is secure, which is most likely going to take, a decent amount of time, especially with how companies work. I mean, Lemon, you yourself work as an engineer when it comes to coding and everything. I would imagine that at that type of level of a hack and all that kind of data breach, it's going to take some time to get everything back to the way it's supposed to be and make sure you're still not, hackable, I guess. I mean, would you say that's probably true?
So I'm going to let you know a little secret that I feel like is not being disseminated well enough. A majority, if not all of hacks, quote, hacks that have happened in the last 5-10 years have not been related to technology at all. And in fact, have been related to a thing called social engineering, which is effectively you harass the poor, secretary or someone who has access to the network within the place that is not technical. Once you have access to someone's account within the network, you're in, right? So you don't have to break into a database if you can just go harass a poor secretary or someone who has access to the network but is non-technical, who doesn't know better, right? And so a majority of these places, I'm sure Sony and Insomniac have gone to these trainings about how not to succumb to these attacks. But I imagine that's how they got in. So a brief tangent, I'll admit, but that's probably how they got in. They could have they could have Fort Knox for their servers, but if the poor secretary or the person has to say yeah or nay to get into the building, let someone into their email, then they're in.
So do you think then that maybe the concept of just probably going over budget is probably one of the main reasons for not wanting to do or not doing the story DLC, especially when we know that they were also working on that live service Spider-Man game and having to create that server infrastructure, which personally is still to this day, one of the main reasons I think that game hit the $300 million, budget that it had, essentially. Like, because creating that type of stuff is very expensive compared to just simply making the game, which is obviously still expensive. But when you throw on trying to make your own custom servers and that infrastructure and everything, that takes a long time. And especially now that was canceled, which personally for me, thank God, I don't think it would have actually worked out that well. I would assume that that's probably one of the main reasons, aka money, that we're not seeing any kind of story DLC, and they're just going to throw that into Spider-Man 3 because we know that that third game is coming around sometime. And they're most likely trying to also get Wolverine out because that game is probably going to be releasing in 2025. There's even some rumors right now that they're going to be showing stuff off probably around the Game Awards, but I'm not really sure. But do you think maybe that budget had to throw kind of a wrench into that, essentially?
I'm sure. I mean, I feel like the return on investment for DLCs, especially one that is so, I'm trying to think of the right word for it, just has so much IP attached to it with Spider-Man having to pay up Disney and all that. I think the ROI would probably be a better thing to make a full-blown game as opposed to DLC.
Right.
Probably makes more sense for the bean counters. So I imagine that probably played into their equation. It would not surprise me if they really had no intention of really going hardcore into DLCs, just like saying screw it. Insomniac's a big company, but they're not like Take-Two. They're not Rockstar.
Well, and I do wonder
on their plate, and they're probably working on Spider-Man 3. So DLC's probably not in their.
Well, and I think one thing, at least again, unless the leaks showed this off, I didn't dig crazy deep into the leaks or anything like that, but we don't know how well the story DLC did for the first game, right? They had 3 of those planned, and if they did not sell the way that they had hoped, then why would you try again with Spider-Man 2? Wouldn't it make more sense to simply try to put that into game 3, essentially? I think is the thing I would take away from it personally.
You can't charge $70 for a DLC.
Right, exactly. So instead of and people have to also realize this is not just in games, it's within movies and anything basically. There is stuff that is left on the kitchen table, as they say, where things are cut, they want to put things into the game, but they don't have the time or the budget to do it. And that's where a lot of story DLC comes from. I know people are going to shout like, oh, it should have been included in the game and everything like that. It's like, but you're not understanding the fact of what the budgets do and what they allow for that type of thing. So if they didn't have the ability to put that extra stuff into the main game, and then they were like, okay, this had to be cut originally from the main game, can we do this as a story DLC? And it's like, well, based on the story DLC that we saw from the first game not doing that well, why don't we just keep that? Because there's probably a good chunk of it that's somewhat made, maybe voices recorded, maybe the very basic look of it is done, but then the extra shaders and everything are not thrown on there yet. Let's take that stuff since it's already halfway done, and we'll just put it in the third game, change a couple of things that chronologically make sense. Or who knows, maybe one of those side missions is the opening mission then for game 3, essentially, right? Whether it's a flashback scene or not. So they could easily do something like that. That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
I would not surprise me if they took this DLC, whatever proposed DLC they might have had in said leak, or just ideas that they had, and just integrated it into 3. Like, at the end of the day, they got to put this content into Spider-Man 3.
Right.
Does it make more sense financially to put it as DLC, to charge people extra for Spider-Man 2, or just to pad out 3 to, add stuff for the open world content for
especially
that.
When a lot of
it's
the
probably more better investment to do on 3,
right? Especially because a lot of the things that when it came to like the reviews of the game, whether it was from outlets or YouTubers or anything, basically a lot of people said that, look, Spider-Man 2 was a good game, but it lacked a lot of extra good side story missions and extra side missions in general and things to do. I mean, that's why people, you can finish the game in like 18 hours, you can platinum the game in 25 or something like that. So
if you can see my hand, that's me raising my hand. I just mainline the main story.
Right, exactly. So yeah, if it would make, I think, more sense to basically say, hey, look, let's take this extra stuff that, we could make as DLC for game 2, but why not just bring it over to game 3 since half of it's done already, or whatever state it's at, essentially, and we'll throw that into game 3, and that makes it bigger, and then people aren't complaining about that stuff, right? Again,
exactly.
You then have to then judge it based on how good that side content is, but regardless, financially, I would say it makes more sense to do that. But the big, you know, obviously the good news out of this right now is that because they're not dealing with the story DLC, is that it actually gets to come to PC faster. So PC players should be happy, especially if you enjoyed the first game. If you enjoyed Miles Morales, you'll enjoy the second game. Story, obviously, everyone's gonna have their preferences. I personally prefer the first story, but I still say overall, game 2 was fun. It was a fun game. I gave it a solid 8 out of 10. And the fact that this game is now coming to PC on January 2025, like, yeah, that's cool right there. So it's gonna be both on Steam and on the Epic Game Store, so you can pick whichever one you want to play on. It will have all the stuff like New Game Plus, new suits, color variants, photo mode features, and all that cool stuff. So I can definitely see some of the photo mode stuff looking really cool, especially on a high-end PC. And it already looked really good on the PS5, but on the high-end PC, whew, that stuff's gonna look really good.
With the ultra-wide monitors.
Oh yeah, the ultra-wide monitors and everything, dude, that's gonna look amazing. So I'm sure some artists are gonna have some fun with that right there. So, but again, I think just in the end, the more I look at this, it's like, yeah, it's a bummer that we're not getting more story DLC, but I don't think it's like the end of the world. It doesn't all of a sudden make the game a crap game because it doesn't have story DLC. It's just simply, if you look at it how most, you know, developers would, or how teams would look at it, it's just like, okay, look, either we could try to pick this as a DLC, which would then delay other things down the road, or let's just take that stuff, put it into game 3 so that we can get it out sooner. So, especially because we know it will be built only for the PS5, eventually going to PC. It's not going to the previous gens. That's what Spider-Man 2 was, essentially. So they already have the main stuff there. It's built. Now they just simply improve upon everything. So don't be expecting your Spider-Man in first person, people. You know who you are on the internet. We talked about this already, but don't expect huge changes and everything. So I will say, though, I hope that they do improve things like how some of the gadget stuff work. I think that is easily doable. But in terms of like, it's a Spider-Man game, it's going to be in New York. If you're going to dock it points for saying it's in the same New York, I don't remember New York changing in the last 200 years. So, I mean, that's the way
I hope
it
they
is.
bring back Bruce Campbell from the OG Spider-Man.
The OG, there we go. There we go.
The movie game on the GameCube.
Oh, God.
Bring back Bruce Campbell. Bring back Bruce Campbell.
Oh, that would definitely be funny.
Well, sequel time already, huh?